Hi, I'm Dr. J from Modern Statistics. Are you new to SPSS system? Perhaps you are a student taking a stats class which requires SPSS, or perhaps your organization uses SPSS for storing and managing data and running statistics. Well, whatever the case may be, if you are new to IBM SPSS, one of the first things you should know is how to input data into SPSS. I would say it's really easy and straightforward, but there are a few tricks that you should know to make your life as SPSS user and data analyst a little easier and less complicated. So let's get right to it. Here I am with SPSS system open on my left. If you have SPSS installed in your computer, then just double click on the SPSS icon to bring this up. I wouldn't call it an SPSS data set just yet since I didn't enter any data in it and there's no data in it. And on my right is an example of paper survey questionnaire where a participant wrote his or her answer on the paper. Our goal here is to transfer or enter the data from the questionnaire to the SPSS system so that it will look something like this. Now, if this is your first trip to SPSS system, I will mention just 3 things that you will eventually have to familiarize yourself with before you start entering data. First, right now, know that we are on the data view, which is also called data editor window view, which displays the contents of your data file. This is where you open, save, and close existing data files, create a new data file, enter new data, make changes to the existing data, and run statistical analysis. Almost everything starts here. Notice I said almost. Yes, not everything starts here. In fact, this brings me to the second thing you should familiarize yourself with, that is the variable view. Click on it and it will take us to the variable view. The variable view is important particularly when trying to enter or transfer data from the paper to SPSS. Now, why is the variable view important? Because in order to enter these data into SPSS, we have to set up the structure of the data file by defining the variables. In other words, we have to prepare what we call data dictionary or codebook in SPSS so that we know what each value actually means and what question each response was for in SPSS. So naturally, we have to know what we need to do with these here. So before we enter data, we must tell SPSS what the names of each question will be and how they will be coded. That reflects what was asked and answered in the paper survey. To start entering data, let's look at the first 3 questions and answers from the paper survey. The first 3 items are about whether survey participants agree or disagree with each statement. Now, since these 3 items are related to organizational learning culture, I'll name them Q1A, Q1B, and Q1C. Okay, question number 1, and question number 1A, question number 1B, and question number 1C. Now, you can name it whatever you want as long as you follow 2 rules. First, the variable name cannot start with a number or a symbol. So I first type Q1A for the first variable in SPSS like so. When you do that and press enter, it will automatically assume that the type of variable is numeric. And the width of the variable is 8. And it will assume that it has 2 decimal values. These are all default values that the SPSS generates, which is fine. We can change all these settings depending on how the data for each question are treated later on. Now, for example, take a look at the scale used for responses. It uses a 5-point Likert scale that ranges from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And normally we would assign numeric values from 1 to 5. So click on the right side of the values column like so, and it will bring up the value labels window. Now type 1 for value as it represents the response category. which is strongly disagree. Click add like so. And you can finish rest of the response scale like so and click OK. Now, then the data structure for question 1A is completed as shown here. And we move on to completing the code book for question 1B and 1C, which share the same response structure as 1A. So it's easy. We type the variable name for Q1B and Q1C like so. Now, for question 1B and 1C, do we enter the response structure like we did for 1A again? Those who are new to SPSS would do it the traditional way, which is to repeat entering the same response structure that we did earlier for 1A again. But there is a much easier way that can save you potentially a lot of time depending on how many variables you have to work on. Well, the easier way in this, since they share the same response structure, is to right-click on the response structure that we already created for Q1A like so, and click copy, and highlight the two response format for the two variables, and right-click and click paste. Then it automatically copies the response structure from Q1A for our Q1B and Q1B like so. So if you have a survey that uses the same scale for, say, 50 questions in the survey, then this copy and paste function can save a lot of time. Now, the final step before entering the actual survey responses is to give label for each question, which is easy. Label is basically where you put the description of the question. So for each question, we will type in each question in SPSS like so, which will look like this. Now, we have completed the data structure for the first 3 questions. We can now enter the survey response data on the data view. So click on the data view. And we start entering the responses for each question like so. We put 3 for Q1A because the response was neutral, which is assigned a value of 3. And we put 2 for Q1B because the response was disagree, which is assigned a value of 2. And we entered 4 for Q1C because the response to that question was agree, which is assigned a value of 4. So for this Likert agreement scale, as the number increases from 1 to 5, you see that the responses become more positive. In other words, more in agreement with each statement. Now, let's do 2 other examples that require slightly different response structures. First is the question on turnover intention. Now, this is a yes or no question. There's no set rule on how or what numeric values you should assign to a response format like this. However, because we're entering data in order to ultimately analyze the data in SPSS, we want to make things easy. And so the preferred numeric systems that we would use for a binary response like this are 0 and 1. It doesn't have to be 0 for yes and 1 for no. It really depends on your research agenda later on, how you actually use this variable. And you can assign 1 for yes and 0 for no if you like. Now we go back to the variable view and set up the data structure for this question. This is question number 2. So we'll name it Q2 and put the description like so. And for the values, click on the right side of the values column for Q2 like so and enter 1 for the value. And for label, type yes and click add. And do that again this time for response no. And you put 0 for the value and no for the label and click add, and we'll get out and by clicking OK. And we go to data view again. Notice in this example that the survey respondent did not answer the turnover intention question. Since there is no response, that means there is no data to enter for this particular case, so we just leave it blank. Now, let's look at question number 3. The question is, in the past 12 months, how many paid sick leaves, sick days have you taken? And the respondent wrote 11 days. Notice for this question, there is no fixed response category or system for the participant. He or she or they would just write the number, right? So this is, in some way, you can treat this as an open-ended question. Just like the previous, we give it a name and label. And for values, we don't do anything, just leave it blank. Go to data view. For question number 3, enter 11. Now that we've entered data of various types now, so let's do one final one. Let's go down to question number 9. The question was here, how many years in your current organization? So how many years have been in your current organization? Now, the respondent here wrote 180 years. This gives us data analysts a big headache because the survey respondent was not being honest. Even if this person were 100 years old today and started working in a factory of some kind, for example, since age 9, still this person would not be older than 91. So mathematically, this is an impossible value that we have here. What do? You have two choices. Either leave it blank or enter the actual response as 180. And in the variable view, right-click on the right side of the column, which will bring up the missing values window. And since it's impossible for someone to work longer than 90 years, we'll say that anything longer than 90 years will be treated as missing. So the range that will be treated as missing is between 90 and something like 999. And click OK to get out. Then when you analyze data, this particular number, 180, will be automatically be removed from your analysis so that you don't make mistakes in your final report. Surely you wouldn't want your audience or your teacher to know that your report accidentally included somebody who claims to be more than 180 years old, correct? So this concludes our brief tutorial on how to prepare different data structures and enter data quickly, and what to do and when there are missing data. I hope this was useful, particularly to those who are new to the SPSS system. Thank you for watching. See you next time.